The burning of New Eden. The morning sun cast long shadows across the golden wheat fields of New Eden. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Alpha, watching the automated harvesters move through the crops like gentle giants. Below her, the colony spread out in neat sectors, residential domes gleaming white in the sunlight, industrial complexes humming with activity, and the great agricultural zones that fed 500,000 people. New Eden was humanity's crown jewel among the frontier colonies. Established 15 years ago, it had grown from a small outpost into a thriving world. Children played in the parks between the domes. Scientists worked in laboratories pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Farmers cultivated crops that would feed the growing population of human space. Sarah sipped her coffee and checked the morning reports. Everything was normal. Trade ships moved between the colony and the orbital stations. Mining operations in the asteroid belt reported good yields. The other 11 human colonies were all functioning well, their status lights glowing green on her command display. She had been born on Earth, but had spent most of her adult life in space. New Eden felt more like home than any planet. The people here were pioneers, builders, dreamers. They had come to the stars not to conquer but to explore, to create something new and beautiful. The communication officer, Lieutenant Torres, looked up from his station. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings from the deep space sensors." Sarah set down her coffee cup. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures, ma'am. Moving fast. I've never seen anything like them." Sarah walked over to Torres's station and looked at the display. 12 contacts were approaching the system at incredible speed. They weren't human ships. Human vessels didn't move that fast or give off those energy patterns. "How long until they reach us?" Sarah asked. Torres ran calculations on his computer. "At their current speed, about 30 minutes. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. In 30 years of space exploration, humans had never encountered alien life. They had found dead worlds, empty systems, ancient ruins on some planets, but never living aliens. Now 12 unknown ships were heading straight for New Eden. "Send a message on all frequencies," Sarah ordered. "Standard first contact protocols. Tell them we are peaceful and want to communicate." Torres nodded and began transmitting. The message went out in multiple languages and mathematical sequences, the same greeting humanity had prepared for this moment. Sarah watched the approaching ships on the tactical display. They were still too far away to get detailed scans, but their energy signatures were massive. Minutes passed. No response came from the alien ships. "Try again," Sarah said. "Maybe they don't understand our language yet." Torres transmitted the message again. Still no response. Sarah activated the colony-wide communication system. "This is Captain Chen to all stations. We have unknown contacts approaching the system. This is not a drill. All defensive systems to ready status. Civilian population should remain calm and follow emergency procedures if ordered." The alien ships were getting closer. Sarah could see them now on the long-range cameras, sleek vessels that looked like they were made of crystal and metal. They moved in perfect formation, their hulls shimmering with energy that made them look almost alive. "Beautiful," Torres whispered. They were beautiful, Sarah had to admit. Unlike the blocky, functional designs of human ships, these vessels looked like works of art. Their surfaces reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Still no response to our transmissions. "Captain," Torres reported. Sarah nodded. Something felt wrong. If these aliens had come to make contact, why weren't they responding? Why approach at such high speed? The alien ships reached the edge of the New Eden system and began to spread out. Sarah watched them take positions around the colony world and its orbital installations. It looked like a battle formation. "Red alert," Sarah announced across the colony. "All civilians to emergency shelters." This is not a drill. Alarms began to sound throughout the orbital station and down on the planet. Sarah had practiced this scenario many times, but she had always imagined it would be against human enemies, perhaps pirates or rogue colonies. Never aliens. The crystal ships moved closer. Sarah could see details of their construction now. Smooth curves, no visible weapons, no obvious communication arrays. They were completely unlike anything humans had ever built. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice tight with fear. "They're charging some kind of energy weapons." Sarah looked at the tactical display. The 12 alien ships had taken positions around New Eden, and energy was building up in crystalline structures along their hulls. The readings were off the charts. "Shields up," Sarah ordered. "Charge the defense platforms." New Eden had 4 orbital defense platforms armed with plasma cannons and missile systems. They were designed to protect against pirates or hostile human forces. Sarah had no idea if they would be effective against alien technology. The aliens still hadn't responded to any communication attempts. They just hung in space around New Eden like silent predators. Then they opened fire. The first blast hit the northern agricultural dome. Sarah watched in horror as the crystalline beam cut through the dome's protective barrier like it was made of paper. The dome exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from orbit. Thousands of people were inside that dome. "Return fire," Sarah shouted. The defense platforms opened up with everything they had. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked toward the alien ships. Sarah held her breath, hoping their weapons would be effective. The alien vessels didn't even bother to dodge. The human weapons struck their hulls and simply disappeared, absorbed by some kind of energy field. The crystal ships continued their attack as if nothing had happened. More beams lanced down from orbit. The residential sectors exploded one by one. The industrial complexes melted under the alien fire. Sarah watched 500,000 people die in minutes. "Emergency transmission to Earth," Sarah ordered. "Tell them we're under attack by unknown aliens. Tell them New Eden is lost." Torres was crying as he transmitted the message. On the planet below, the great cities of New Eden burned. The agricultural zones were gone. The spaceports were destroyed. The alien ships methodically worked their way across the planet's surface, leaving nothing but devastation. Sarah tried to think of something, anything she could do. The defense platforms were useless. The colony ships in orbit were unarmed civilian vessels. There was no way to fight these aliens. One of the crystal ships turned toward Orbital Station Alpha. Sarah saw the energy building in its weapons. "All hands, abandon station," she announced. "This is Captain Chen. Abandon station immediately." She ran toward the escape pods with the rest of her crew. Behind her, she could hear the alien weapon charging. The station shook as the beam struck. Emergency lights flickered and went out. Sarah reached the escape pod bay, just as the station began to break apart. She pushed Torres and 2 other crew members into a pod and sealed the hatch. Through the small window, she watched Orbital Station Alpha die in a ball of flame. The escape pod's engines fired, pushing them away from the destruction. Sarah looked back at New Eden one last time. The planet that had been her home was now a burning wasteland. Nothing moved on the surface. No lights showed in the darkness. 500,000 people were dead. The alien ships gathered into formation and disappeared into hyperspace as suddenly as they had arrived. They left no message, no explanation. They had simply come, destroyed everything, and left. Sarah's escape pod drifted in space among the wreckage. Emergency beacons from other survivors flickered on the display. Out of 500,000 people, perhaps a few thousand had escaped in time. The rest were gone. Hours later, a human rescue ship arrived from the outer system. As Sarah was pulled aboard, she learned the horrible truth. New Eden wasn't the only colony that had been attacked. All 12 human settlements beyond Earth's solar system had been hit simultaneously. 43 million people were dead. The aliens had destroyed humanity's presence in deep space in a single coordinated strike, and they had left behind a message, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect human languages. Inferior species will yield inhabited worlds to the Empire. Compliance is not optional. You have been warned. Sarah sat in the rescue ship's medical bay, still in shock. Around her, other survivors wept for their lost families and friends. Outside the window, the ruins of New Eden continued to burn. She thought about the children who had been playing in the parks that morning, the scientists working in their laboratories, the farmers tending their crops, all gone now, killed by aliens who gave no warning and showed no mercy. But Sarah Chen was a fighter. As the rescue ship headed back toward Earth, she made a promise to herself and to the memory of everyone who had died. These aliens thought humans were inferior. They thought they could destroy human colonies and demand surrender. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Earth would hear about this attack. Earth would respond. And when humanity's response came, these aliens would discover what happened when you threatened human children. The message to Earth had already been sent. Soon, every human in the solar system would know what had happened to the colonies. They would know that aliens existed, and that these aliens considered humans to be nothing more than pests to be exterminated. Sarah looked out at the stars and felt a cold anger building inside her. The aliens had made a mistake. They had shown humans what they were capable of, but they had also shown humans what they were fighting for. Somewhere out there among the stars was an alien empire that had just declared war on humanity. They had destroyed the colonies to send a message. Earth would send a message back, and it would be written in fire across the galaxy. The hammer falls. The emergency session of the United Earth Council lasted 18 hours. Admiral Marcus Kane stood at attention in the center of the great chamber, watching as representatives from every nation and colony argued over humanity's response to the alien attack. Kane was 62 years old and had spent 40 years in space. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and put down the Martian rebellion 15 years ago. He was known as a hard man who got results. Today, the politicians would decide if he was the right man to face an alien empire. The debate raged around him. Some representatives wanted to negotiate. Others demanded immediate retaliation. A few suggested hiding, pulling all human settlements back to the solar system and hoping the aliens would leave Earth alone. Kane listened to the arguments and felt his anger growing. These politicians had never seen combat. They had never watched good people die because of enemy action. They thought they could talk their way out of anything. Finally, Secretary General Morrison called for order. The chamber fell silent. "Admiral Kane," Morrison said, "you've reviewed all the data from the attacks. What is your assessment?" Kane stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried the authority of someone who had commanded in battle. The aliens hit all 12 colonies simultaneously. They used overwhelming force and showed no interest in communication. This was not a misunderstanding or a territorial dispute. This was a deliberate act of genocide designed to terrorize us into submission. Murmurs rose from the gallery. Kane continued. "The message they broadcast after the attacks makes their intentions clear. They consider us an inferior species and demand that we surrender our worlds to their empire. They've done this before, and they'll do it again unless we stop them." Representative Chen from the Asian Federation stood up. "Admiral, what do you propose? We know nothing about their military capabilities beyond what we saw at the colonies. They destroyed our defenses easily." Kane nodded. "Their technology is more advanced than ours, but not impossibly so. Our weapons did reach their ships. They just had better defensive systems. That means we can hurt them if we find the right approach." "And if we can't?" asked Representative Walsh from the European Union. Kane's expression hardened. "Then humanity dies. These aliens aren't interested in coexistence. They want our worlds, and they're willing to commit genocide to get them. We fight now while we still can, or we surrender and wait for them to finish the job." The chamber erupted in arguments again. Some representatives accused Kane of warmongering. Others demanded to know if Earth's military could actually win against such advanced aliens. Kane waited for quiet, then spoke again. "Give me 18 months and unlimited resources. I'll build a fleet that can fight these aliens. More than that, I'll build a fleet that can win." "That's impossible," protested Representative Singh from the Indian Republic. "We don't have the infrastructure to build a major fleet in 18 months. "Then we build the infrastructure," Kane replied. "Every shipyard from here to Pluto, every mining station in the belt, every research facility and weapons lab. We mobilize everything humanity has, and we do it now." Secretary General Morrison leaned forward. "What makes you think 18 months is enough time?" Kane activated a holographic display that showed the alien ships captured on camera during the attacks. Intelligence analysis suggests these aliens use faster-than-light communication. They'll report back to their empire about the destruction of our colonies. Based on their ship movements and the coordination of their attacks, we estimate their main force is approximately 18 months away at maximum FTL speed. The display changed to show humanity's current military assets. The numbers were not impressive compared to an interstellar empire. Right now we have 200 combat vessels scattered across the solar system. Most are patrol boats and system defense ships. Against a real alien fleet, they wouldn't last 5 minutes. Representative Chen frowned. "Then how do you propose to fight an entire empire?" Kane smiled grimly. "We do what humans have always done when faced with a superior enemy. We adapt, we innovate. We fight smarter instead of harder." He activated another display showing theoretical weapon designs and ship configurations. Dr. Elena Vasquez at the Titan Research Station has been working on quantum field manipulation. Her team believes they can weaponize quantum disruption effects. If they're right, we could have weapons that ignore conventional defensive systems. "Theoretical weapons won't save us," Representative Walsh objected. "Then we make them real," Kane said. We take every scientist, every engineer, every researcher in human space, and we put them to work. We test every wild theory and impossible idea. Some will fail, but some might work. And the ones that work could give us the edge we need. Morrison studied the displays. Even if these weapons work, we still need ships to carry them. Industrial platforms to build them. Raw materials to construct everything. Kane nodded. The asteroid belt has enough metal to build 1,000 fleets. Mars has the industrial capacity to manufacture components. Luna has the shipyards to assemble everything. We have the resources. We just need the will to use them. And the crew for all these ships? Asked Representative Singh. Every human who can hold a weapon, Kane replied. This isn't a war between nations anymore. This is a fight for the survival of our species. Everyone serves, everyone contributes, or everyone dies. The chamber fell silent. The weight of Kane's words settled over the representatives like a heavy blanket. Outside the great windows, Earth turned slowly in space, beautiful and peaceful and completely unaware that its children had just been slaughtered among the stars. Finally, Morrison spoke. Admiral Kane, if we give you this authority, unlimited resources, complete military control, what guarantee do we have that you can actually defeat these aliens? Kane met his gaze steadily. None. But I can guarantee that if we don't try, humanity ends here. These aliens have probably wiped out dozens of species before us. We're just the latest in a long line of civilizations they've destroyed. But we're also the first species they've attacked that has the technology and resources to fight back effectively. He gestured to the display showing human industrial capacity. They made a mistake when they chose to destroy our colonies instead of Earth itself. They wanted to terrorize us into submission, but they've actually given us time to prepare. 18 months to build the largest fleet in human history. 18 months to develop weapons they've never seen before. 18 months to show them that humanity doesn't surrender. Representative Chen stood again. And if your plan fails? If Earth falls? Kane's voice was ice cold. Then at least we'll go down fighting. At least we'll make them pay for every human life they've taken. And maybe, just maybe, we'll hurt them badly enough that the next species they encounter will have a chance. The vote was close, but Kane got his authorization. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Morrison approached him. Admiral, I hope you understand what you're asking for. You want to turn our entire civilization into a war machine. Kane nodded. It's the only way. These aliens think they can treat us like animals to be slaughtered. They're about to learn that humans are the most dangerous animals in the galaxy when you threaten our families. Within hours, Kane's orders went out across human space. Every ship, every station, every settlement received the same message: prepare for total war. On Mars, the great industrial complexes began retooling their production lines for military hardware. In the asteroid belt, mining ships started extracting raw materials at maximum capacity. On Luna, the orbital shipyards expanded their operations around the clock. Dr. Elena Vasquez received unlimited funding and resources for her quantum weapons research. Other scientists across human space began working on similar projects: gravity manipulation, directed energy weapons, adaptive artificial intelligence, anything that might give humanity an edge against alien technology. The transformation was unlike anything in human history. Nations that had been rivals for centuries suddenly worked together with single-minded purpose. Corporate executives who had spent their lives competing for profits now shared resources freely. Scientists who had guarded their research jealously began collaborating on projects that would have seemed impossible just days before. Kane established his headquarters on Ceres Station, the largest installation in the asteroid belt. From there, he could coordinate the massive construction effort and keep watch for alien activity. The first month was chaos. Supply chains broke down as factories switched to war production. Transportation systems strained under the load of moving raw materials and components. Workers struggled to adapt to new jobs and new priorities. But gradually, the system began to work. Humans had always been adaptable, and the threat of extinction focused their efforts like nothing else could. Production numbers that economists had said were impossible became routine. Construction schedules that engineers had called fantasy became reality. By the end of the third month, the first new warships rolled out of the Luna shipyards. They were crude compared to what human engineers hoped to build eventually. But they were functional, and they carried weapons that no alien had ever seen before. Dr. Vasquez achieved her first breakthrough in quantum weaponry during the fourth month. The test firing of her prototype quantum torpedo literally tore a hole in space-time for several seconds before reality snapped back into place. The energy release was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, but it bypassed all known forms of defensive shielding. Kane watched the test footage and felt something like hope for the first time since the colonies fell. Humanity was fighting back. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had something else. The ability to innovate under pressure, to adapt to any threat, to turn desperate circumstances into unexpected advantages. The work continued. 18 months seemed like both forever and no time at all. There was always more to build, more to test, more to prepare. Kane slept 4 hours a night and spent the rest of his time coordinating the massive effort. Messages came in from the deep space monitoring stations. The aliens were coming. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures moving toward the solar system at faster-than-light speeds. The main fleet would arrive in approximately 6 months. Kane studied the sensor data and felt grim satisfaction. Let them come. Humanity was ready. Forged and Fire Captain Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of what had once been New Eden's capital city. The buildings were twisted metal and melted stone, still radioactive 18 months after the alien attack. Her radiation suit beeped warnings as she moved through the devastation, but she ignored them. She had come here for a reason. The Ghost Corps training had been brutal. Of the 10,000 volunteers who had started the program, only 500 had made it through. They were trained for one purpose: to infiltrate alien installations, gather intelligence, and cause as much damage as possible. Sarah had volunteered the day after the Earth Council authorized Admiral Kane's war preparation. She couldn't build ships or design weapons, but she could fight. The aliens had taken her home and killed her people. Now she would take the fight to them. Her team consisted of 12 specialists, each an expert in different forms of warfare. Lieutenant Torres, the communication officer who had survived New Eden with her, was now trained in alien technology infiltration. Sergeant Williams was a demolitions expert who could build bombs from household materials. Corporal Zhang was a sniper who could put a bullet through a target at 2 kilometers. Together, they were humanity's first attempt at striking back at the alien empire. Admiral Kane had given them their mission personally. Deep Space Reconnaissance had detected an alien outpost in the Proxima Centauri system. It appeared to be lightly defended, probably a supply depot or communication relay. The Ghost Corps was to infiltrate the facility, steal whatever intelligence they could find, and destroy it. More importantly, they were to capture an alien ship if possible. Human engineers had learned a lot from studying the wreckage at the destroyed colonies, but they needed intact alien technology to understand how their enemies fought. Sarah's team approached Proxima Centauri in a modified stealth ship. The vessel was one of Dr. Vasquez's early experiments, a craft that could bend light around itself, making it nearly invisible to most sensors. It wasn't perfect, but it should get them close enough to the alien outpost without being detected. Contact, Torres reported from his sensor station. One alien facility on the second planet. Looks like a communications array and supply depot, just like intelligence suggested. Sarah studied the tactical display. The alien outpost was built into the side of a mountain, its crystalline structures jutting out like a bizarre crystal garden. 2 alien ships were docked at the facility, smaller vessels than the ones that had destroyed the colonies, but still dangerous. Guards? Sarah asked. Torres ran detailed scans. Minimal. Maybe 20 alien life signs in the facility. The ships appear to be automated cargo vessels. Sarah nodded. The aliens were confident. They had destroyed humanity's colonies so easily that they probably didn't expect any retaliation. That overconfidence would be their weakness. Take us down to the surface, Sarah ordered. Landing Zone Alpha, 2 kilometers from the facility. The stealth ship descended through the thin atmosphere and touched down in a rocky valley. Sarah and her team prepared their equipment. Human weapons modified with alien technology salvaged from the colony attacks, explosives designed to disrupt crystalline structures, and recording devices to capture any intelligence they found. They moved across the alien landscape under cover of darkness. The planet was cold and barren, with a thin atmosphere that required breathing gear. Strange rock formations jutted up from the ground like alien sculptures. As they approached the outpost, Sarah got her first close look at living alien architecture. The building seemed to grow from the rock itself. their surfaces rippling with patterns of light. It was beautiful in an unsettling way, like looking at something that had never been meant for human eyes. Motion sensors are picking up movement inside, Torres whispered over the radio. The aliens seem to be following regular patrol patterns. Sarah studied the facility through her scope. The aliens themselves were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift between different colors. They moved with an odd flowing grace that made them seem almost like they were dancing rather than walking. Remember, Sarah said to her team, we need prisoners if possible. Intelligence wants to know how they think, how they communicate. Sergeant Williams placed charges on the facility's power conduits, while Corporal Zhang took position on a nearby ridge. Sarah and Torres approached the main entrance. The alien guards never saw them coming. Human stealth technology had advanced rapidly in the 18 months since the colony attacks. The Ghost Corps moved like shadows, striking fast and disappearing before their enemies could react. Sarah's team took control of the facility in minutes. The aliens seemed shocked that humans had found them. They offered no resistance, simply standing motionless as if they couldn't understand what was happening. Torres connected his equipment to the alien computer systems. I'm in, he reported, downloading everything I can access. Sarah interrogated the captured aliens through a translation device built from alien technology. What she learned made her blood run cold. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. They had been expanding across the galaxy for over 3,000 years, conquering and destroying dozens of civilizations. Humanity was just the latest species to be marked for extinction. But the most horrifying discovery was in the facility's database. The aliens had detailed records of every species they had wiped out. Biological data, cultural information, even recordings of the final moments of entire civilizations. 47 species had been completely destroyed by the Zephyrian Empire. Billions of intelligent beings, each with their own hopes and dreams and cultures reduced to nothing more than data files in an alien computer. Sarah, Torres called urgently, you need to see this. Sarah looked at his display and felt her heart stop. The database contained detailed information about Earth's defenses, human military capabilities, and population centers. The aliens had been studying humanity for months, preparing for a full-scale invasion. According to the files, a massive Zephyrian fleet was already on its way to Earth. 3,000 ships led by Fleet Admiral Korath Hai, one of the Empire's most successful military commanders. He had personally overseen the destruction of 12 other species. Copy everything, Sarah ordered. Every file, every piece of data. Earth needs to know what's coming. While Torres worked, Sarah explored the rest of the facility. In one section, she found something that made her sick to her stomach. A trophy room filled with artifacts from the destroyed civilizations. Art, weapons, cultural items, all displayed like hunting trophies. One display case contained items from a species called the Vorthan. According to the label, they had been pacified only 50 years ago. The case held what looked like children's toys and family photographs. An entire civilization reduced to museum pieces. Sarah felt her anger crystallize into something harder and colder than ice. The Zephyrian Empire wasn't just conquering worlds. They were erasing entire species from existence and keeping souvenirs. Download complete, Torres reported. I've got everything. Fleet movements, military tactics, technological specifications, even personal communications between alien commanders. Sarah nodded. Time to go. Williams, prepare the charges. As her team prepared to destroy the facility, Sarah made a decision. She activated the facility's communication array and sent a message on all Zephyrian frequencies. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Ghost Corps, she said. You destroyed our colonies and killed our people. You think we're just another weak species you can erase from the galaxy. You're wrong. We're coming for you. All of you. And we're going to finish what you started. The team evacuated the facility and watched from a safe distance as Williams's charges detonated. The alien outpost collapsed in a shower of crystal and twisted metal. The two alien ships tried to escape, but Corporal Zhang's modified sniper rifle fired quantum disruption rounds that tore through their hulls like paper. One ship was completely destroyed, but the other was only disabled. Sarah's team boarded it and found the crew dead from radiation exposure, but the ship's systems were intact. Torres, can you fly this thing? Sarah asked. Torres studied the alien controls. I think so. The interface is weird, but the basic principles seem similar to human ships. They flew the captured alien vessel back to Earth, where it was immediately turned over to human engineers and scientists. Within weeks, reverse engineering projects were producing new technologies that would give humanity crucial advantages in the coming war. But more importantly, the intelligence Sarah's team had gathered revealed the true scope of the threat humanity faced. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 3,000 star systems and had military forces numbering in the millions of ships. Admiral Kane studied the data with his senior staff. "They're not just planning to destroy Earth," he said grimly. "They're planning to wipe out every human settlement in the galaxy. Complete genocide, just like they did to the other 47 species." The intelligence also revealed something else: the locations of other species that were currently under Zephyrian rule. Enslaved civilizations that had been conquered but not yet destroyed, forced to serve the Empire as laborers and soldiers. "We're not the only ones fighting them," Kane realized. "There are resistance movements on dozens of worlds. If we could coordinate with them..." Sarah, now promoted to Major for her successful mission, stood before Kane's strategic planning board. "Sir, request permission to return to Zephyrian space. The Ghost Corps can make contact with these resistance groups, provide them with weapons and training." Kane considered this. "It's incredibly dangerous. You'd be operating deep in enemy territory with no support." Sarah smiled grimly. "That's what we're trained for, sir. Besides, we owe it to those species. The Zephyrians destroyed them the same way they destroyed our colonies. If we can help them fight back, we should." Kane approved the mission. Over the following months, Ghost Corps teams infiltrated Zephyrian space and made contact with resistance movements on a dozen worlds. They provided weapons, training, and most importantly, hope. The enslaved species learned that someone was finally fighting back against the Empire. Humans shared their new technologies and tactical knowledge freely, asking for nothing in return except cooperation against their common enemy. Meanwhile, on Earth and throughout human space, the massive military buildup continued. The intelligence from Sarah's mission allowed human engineers to design weapons specifically to counter Zephyrian technology. New ship designs incorporated alien defensive systems while adding human innovations. Dr. Vasquez's quantum weapons project reached full production. The warheads were unlike anything ever built. Devices that could literally tear holes in the fabric of spacetime, bypassing any known form of defensive shielding. But perhaps most importantly, humanity was no longer fighting alone. The resistance movements that Sarah's teams had contacted began coordinating their efforts. For the first time in thousands of years, the Zephyrian Empire faced organized opposition from multiple species. The aliens had made a critical error. They had assumed that humans, like the other species they had destroyed, would simply submit or die. They had not considered that humans might fight back effectively, or that they might unite other oppressed species against the Empire. As the Zephyrian main fleet approached Earth, Admiral Kane received reports from across the galaxy. Resistance forces were striking Zephyrian installations on 50 different worlds. The Empire's supply lines were under constant attack. Their communications networks were being sabotaged. The aliens had wanted to make an example of humanity. Instead, humanity was making an example of them. "Let them come," Kane said as he watched the long-range sensors track the approaching alien fleet. "We'll show them what happens when you threaten human children, and then we'll show the galaxy what freedom looks like." The Stormbreak's fleet Admiral Korathai stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and studied the primitive star system ahead. Saul, home to the inferior species that had dared to resist the Zephyrian Empire. The human rebellion had been amusing at first. A few destroyed outposts, some minor supply disruptions, messages of defiance broadcast across Zephyrian communication networks. The Empire had faced such resistance before from newly conquered species. It never lasted long. But the reports from the past 6 months had been disturbing. Coordinated attacks across dozens of systems, weapons that somehow bypassed Zephyrian shielding. Worst of all, other subject species had begun joining the human rebellion. Korathai had been chosen to end this nonsense permanently. His fleet of 5,000 ships was the largest force the Empire had assembled in centuries. It included the newest dreadnoughts equipped with planet-killing weapons that could reduce entire worlds to molten slag. The plan was simple. Destroy Earth's defenses, eliminate the human homeworld, then hunt down every remaining human settlement in the galaxy. Once humanity was extinct, the other rebellious species would return to proper submission. Admiral, his tactical officer reported. "We are detecting significant defensive installations throughout the system." The humans have been busy. Korath High studied the sensor readings with interest. The humans had indeed been busy. Weapon platforms were hidden throughout the asteroid belt. The planets showed signs of massive military construction. Even the small moons had been turned into fortified positions. Impressive for primitives, Korath High admitted. But quantity cannot overcome quality. Begin the attack. The Zephyrian fleet spread out as it entered the Sol system. 5,000 crystalline ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons could destroy cities with single shots. Their shields had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Admiral Kane watched the alien fleet approach from his command center deep inside Ceres Station. Around him, dozens of officers coordinated the defense of humanity's home system. The massive screens showed every ship, every weapon platform, every defensive position in the solar system. "Enemy fleet entering optimal range," reported his tactical officer. "Commander Park, all defensive systems are ready." Kane nodded. For 18 months, humanity had prepared for this moment. Every resource, every innovation, every desperate hope had been focused on this single battle. If they won, humanity would survive. If they lost, the species would be extinct within a generation. "Signal all units," Kane ordered. "Execute Operation Prometheus." Across the solar system, hidden weapon platforms powered up. In the asteroid belt, disguised mining stations revealed themselves to be massive railgun batteries. On Mars, enormous plasma cannons emerged from underground bunkers. Around Earth itself, orbital defense grids activated with enough firepower to glass a continent. But Kane's real surprise was hidden beyond Pluto, in the cold darkness of the outer system. There, in secret shipyards built over the past year, waited humanity's ultimate weapon. The Zephyrian fleet advanced with typical arrogance. They had destroyed 47 species before humanity. They saw no reason why this battle should be any different. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness between worlds. Human railguns fired solid metal slugs at significant fractions of light speed. Plasma batteries sent streams of superheated matter across millions of kilometers. Missile swarms launched from hidden platforms, each warhead equipped with Dr. Vasquez's quantum disruption technology. The Zephyrian response was immediate and devastating. Crystalline beams lanced out from their ships, each one capable of destroying a human battlecruiser with a single hit. Their own missiles warped space around them, making them nearly impossible to intercept. But something was different this time. The human weapons were not bouncing harmlessly off Zephyrian shields. The quantum disruption warheads were tearing through alien defenses like they didn't exist. For the first time in thousands of years, Zephyrian ships were taking real damage. Korath High watched in growing alarm as his lead ships began to suffer casualties. A human railgun slug punched completely through the heavy cruiser Stellar Wrath, detonating its reactor. Quantum torpedoes gutted the destroyer Endless Victory, leaving it a drifting hulk. "How are their weapons penetrating our shields?" Korath High demanded. His science officer studied the readings frantically. "Unknown, Admiral. The human weapons appear to be using some form of quantum field manipulation that destabilizes our defensive matrices." Korath High's confidence began to waver. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered the galaxy through technological superiority. Their weapons were better, their shields stronger, their ships faster. But these humans were fighting with technology that the Empire had never encountered. The battle raged across the inner solar system. Human fighters, small and agile, darted between the massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts like angry wasps. They couldn't match the firepower of the alien capital ships, but they carried quantum torpedoes that could cripple even the largest vessels. Captain Sarah Chen led a squadron of Ghost Corps fighters in a desperate attack on the Zephyrian flagship. Her modified fighter was barely a speck next to the massive Eternal Dominion, but she had trained for this moment for 18 months. "All units, target the command tower," Sarah transmitted to her squadron. "If we can take out their admiral, the rest of the fleet might lose coordination." Her fighters dove toward the massive alien ship, dodging defensive fire from dozens of point defense weapons. The Eternal Dominion was over 10 kilometers long, its crystalline hull bristling with weapons. But Sarah had studied the ship's design from captured intelligence. She knew where the weak points were. Her quantum torpedo struck the flagship's shield generator, The explosion tore a hole in the alien defensive field, allowing the rest of her squadron to target the ship's vulnerable hull. Inside the Eternal Dominion, Korathai felt his ship shudder under the human attack. Emergency alerts flooded his command center. Systems that had never failed before were going offline one by one. Shield generators are down, his tactical officer reported. Hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Engine output falling. Korathai stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His flagship, the pride of the Zephyrian fleet, was being crippled by primitive human fighters no larger than escape pods. All ships, concentrate fire on the human planet, he ordered desperately. Destroy their homeworld. End this. But Admiral Kane had anticipated this move. As the Zephyrian fleet began to focus on Earth, hidden defense platforms around the planet opened fire. Massive plasma beams and quantum cannons created a wall of destruction that even the alien dreadnoughts couldn't penetrate. More importantly, the concentrated Zephyrian attack had left their fleet formation exposed. Kane gave the signal for the final phase of Operation Prometheus. Beyond Pluto, in the darkness of the outer system, engines ignited. The fleet that emerged from hiding was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 100 ships, each one built with a combination of human engineering and reverse-engineered alien technology. They were smaller than the Zephyrian dreadnoughts, but faster and more maneuverable, and they carried weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. Leading, this ghost fleet was the newest addition to humanity's forces and artificial intelligence that had been designed using captured Zephyrian data. Unlike human admirals who needed time to process information and make decisions, the AI could coordinate hundreds of ships simultaneously, reacting to battlefield conditions faster than any biological mind. The AI fleet struck the Zephyrian formation from behind while their attention was focused on Earth. Quantum torpedoes and gravitational lances tore through alien hulls. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Korathai watched his fleet disintegrate around him. 3,000 years of Zephyrian military dominance were crumbling in a matter of hours. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. Admiral, his communication officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human command. Kane's face appeared on the alien ship's main screen. The human admiral looked tired but determined, like a man who had been pushed beyond his limits and found strength he didn't know he possessed. Fleet Admiral Korathai, Kane said calmly. I am Admiral Marcus Kane of the United Earth Defense Force. You came here to destroy my species. Instead, you've signed the death warrant for your empire. Korathai found his voice. You cannot defeat the empire with a single battle. We control 3,000 systems. Our forces number in the millions. Kane smiled coldly. Had you had 3,000 systems, while you were coming here to destroy Earth, we were destroying everything you left behind. Your empire is falling apart, Admiral. Planet by planet, system by system. The truth of Kane's words hit Korathai like a physical blow. While the main fleet had been traveling to Earth, the human resistance movements had been coordinating attacks across Zephyrian space. 47 enslaved species had risen up simultaneously, armed with human weapons and supported by Ghost Corps advisors. The Empire's communication networks had been so thoroughly compromised that news of the rebellions hadn't reached the fleet. Korathai had led his forces into a trap, leaving the Empire defenseless against a galaxy-wide uprising. Your species made a mistake when they chose to destroy our colonies instead of negotiating, Kane continued. You showed us what you were capable of, but you also showed us what we were fighting for. Every human child you killed, every family you destroyed, every dream you crushed, all of that has been paid back with interest. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as another quantum torpedo found its mark. Emergency power flickered throughout the ship. Around the flagship, the remainder of the Zephyrian fleet was either destroyed or fleeing in disorder. Korathai looked at the tactical display one last time. Of his 5,000 ships, fewer than 300 remained intact. The greatest fleet in Zephyrian history had been broken by a species the Empire had considered primitive. This isn't over, Korathai said desperately. The Empire will rebuild. We will return. Kane's expression didn't change. No, you won't, because we're not stopping here. Every world you've conquered, every species you've enslaved, every system you control, we're coming for all of it. And we're not coming alone. The transmission ended just as Sarah Chen's final attack run succeeded in penetrating the Eternal Dominion's bridge. The flagship exploded in a ball of quantum fire that could be seen from Earth. With their command ship destroyed and their admiral dead, the remaining Zephyrian ships scattered. Some tried to flee the system but were hunted down by Kane's AI fleet. Others surrendered, their crews too shocked by the defeat to continue fighting. The Battle of Saul was over. Humanity had not only survived the Empire's ultimate attack, they had completely destroyed it. Kane stood in his command center watching the cleanup operations on the main screen. Around him, his officers were celebrating humanity's greatest military victory, but Kane felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian Empire had taught humanity a valuable lesson about the galaxy. It was a dangerous place, full of species that would destroy others without mercy or hesitation. But the Empire had also learned something about humanity, that humans were the most dangerous predators in the galaxy when you threatened their families. The war was far from over. There were still Zephyrian forces scattered across the galaxy, still enslaved species waiting for liberation. But the Battle of Saul had proven that the Empire could be defeated. More importantly, it had shown every species in the galaxy that someone was finally fighting back. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending. The age of human expansion was about to begin. The Reckoning. 3 years after the Battle of Saul, Major Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the Zephyrian imperial capital. The once mighty city stretched across an entire continent on the Empire's homeworld, its crystalline spires reaching toward the sky like broken fingers. Now those spires were shattered, their light extinguished forever. Sarah walked through streets that had once bustled with the traffic of an interstellar empire. Alien architecture lay in ruins around her, beautiful and terrible in its destruction. The air smelled of smoke and ozone from the final battle that had ended Zephyrian civilization. Behind her, human and alien children played in the rubble. Representatives of 47 different species, all liberated from Zephyrian rule, now worked together to build something new from the ashes of the old empire. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine 3 years ago. The campaign to destroy the Zephyrian Empire had been unlike anything in galactic history. What started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become a crusade of liberation that swept across 3,000 star systems. After the Battle of Saul, Admiral Kane had wasted no time in pressing humanity's advantage. The AI fleet that had proven so effective against the Zephyrian main force was rapidly expanded. Automated shipyards built new vessels faster than any organic workforce could manage, each one incorporating lessons learned from previous battles. But the real key to victory had been the alliance between humanity and the Empire's former subjects. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves equipped with weapons that could challenge their oppressors. The Vorthon, conquered 50 years ago, proved to be natural guerrilla fighters. The Kalari, enslaved for over a millennium, had maintained detailed intelligence networks that provided crucial information about Zephyrian installations. Each liberated world became a base for further operations. Human Ghost Corps teams worked with local resistance movements to identify targets and coordinate attacks. Dr. Vasquez's quantum weapons were manufactured on dozens of worlds, ensuring that the rebellion had unlimited firepower. The Zephyrians had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force would always triumph. They had never faced an enemy that could match their weapons or an uprising that spanned their entire territory simultaneously. The war had lasted 3 years, but it was really over after the first 6 months. Once the enslaved species realized that the empire could be defeated, revolution spread like wildfire. Zephyrian forces found themselves fighting on thousands of fronts with dwindling resources and no central coordination. Sarah's role in the final campaign had been to coordinate the liberation of the Empire's core worlds. The Zephyrian homeworld had been heavily defended, protected by automated defense systems and the last remnants of the Imperial fleet. But by the time human forces arrived, most of the planet's population had already surrendered. The Zephyrians, it turned out, were not the ruthless conquerors their actions had suggested. They were a dying species, desperate to preserve their civilization by any means necessary. Their homeworld was slowly becoming uninhabitable due to environmental damage from millennia of industrial development. Conquering other worlds had been their attempt to find a new home. That didn't excuse their genocide of 47 species, but it explained why they had been so desperate and ruthless. Fear of extinction had driven them to become the very thing they feared. a force that destroyed other civilizations. Sarah found Admiral Kane in the ruins of the Imperial Palace, studying a holographic display that showed the current state of former Zephyrian space. The galaxy was free for the first time in 3 millennia, but freedom came with its own challenges. "How are the liberation efforts proceeding?" Sarah asked. Kane gestured to the display. "Better than expected. Most of the enslaved species are adapting well to independence. The Vorthan have already re-established their old government. The Kalari are building new cities on worlds they haven't seen in 1,000 years. Sarah nodded. It was remarkable how quickly civilizations could recover once they were given the chance. Species that had been reduced to slave labor were rediscovering their cultures, their technologies, their hopes for the future. "Any problems with coordination?" Sarah asked. Kane pointed to several systems on the display. "Some territorial disputes between species that were resettled on the same worlds. A few groups that want to restart their old wars now that the Empire isn't keeping them separated. Nothing we can't handle." Sarah studied the display. The liberated territory was vast. 3,000 star systems, billions of worlds, dozens of intelligent species. Managing such a diverse alliance would be a challenge even for humanity's advanced organizational systems. "What about the remaining Zephyrians?" Sarah asked. Kane's expression grew serious. "That's more complicated. Most of their military forces have been destroyed or surrendered, but there are still civilian populations on hundreds of worlds. They're not responsible for the Empire's crimes, but a lot of the liberated species want revenge." Sarah understood the problem. The Zephyrians had committed genocide against 47 civilizations. The survivors of those species wanted justice, and many didn't distinguish between Zephyrian soldiers and civilians. "What's Earth's position?" Sarah asked. Kane activated another display showing the current political situation. "The United Earth Council has established the Galactic Liberation Authority to coordinate reconstruction efforts. We're taking the position that genocide is wrong, regardless of who commits it. The surviving Zephyrians will be relocated to reservation worlds where they can rebuild their civilization without threatening others." It was a practical solution, though Sarah doubted it would satisfy everyone. Some of the liberated species wanted complete extermination of the Zephyrian people. Others wanted them enslaved as punishment for their crimes. Humanity's more moderate approach was controversial, but probably the only way to prevent the galaxy from descending into endless cycles of revenge. "The real question," Kane continued, "is what happens next. We've liberated 3,000 star systems and 47 species. Now we need to help them build something better than what came before." Sarah looked out through the palace's broken windows at the reconstruction efforts below. Human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to restore power grids and communication networks. Former slaves were learning to use technologies that had been forbidden to them for centuries. It was an enormous undertaking. The Zephyrian Empire had deliberately kept their subject species technologically dependent, preventing them from developing their own industries or militaries. Now those species needed to rebuild everything from scratch. "Humanity's taking the lead in reconstruction?" Sarah asked. Kane nodded. "We have the most advanced technology and the largest fleet. Plus, we're the only species that doesn't have territorial claims on former Zephyrian worlds. That makes us neutral arbitrators when disputes arise." Sarah smiled at the irony. 3 years ago, humanity had been on the verge of extinction. Now they were the dominant military and technological power in the galaxy, responsible for maintaining peace among dozens of species. "Of course," Kane added, "some species are concerned about replacing Zephyrian dominance with human dominance. They're worried we'll become the next galactic empire." Sarah understood those concerns. Humanity had developed incredible military capabilities during the war. The AI fleets alone could probably conquer any single species in the galaxy. Some alien leaders were undoubtedly wondering if they had simply traded one set of masters for another. "What's our response to those concerns?" Sarah asked. Kane activated a final display showing humanity's long-term plans for the galaxy. "Complete withdrawal of human military forces from liberated territory within 10 years. We'll provide technology and training to help each species defend themselves, but we won't maintain permanent bases or occupation forces." Sarah studied the plan with interest. It was ambitious and probably unprecedented in galactic history. Most species that achieved military dominance used it to build empires. Humanity was planning to give up their advantages voluntarily. The Council believes that long-term stability requires genuine independence for all species, Kane explained. We can't prevent future conflicts by maintaining a permanent military presence, but we can give every species the tools they need to defend themselves and resolve disputes peacefully. It was an idealistic vision, but Sarah thought it might actually work. The galaxy had experienced 3,000 years of authoritarian rule under the Zephyrians. Perhaps what it needed now was a chance to try something different. A communication officer approached Kane with an urgent message. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Outer Rim. A Zephyrian fleet has been spotted near the Andromeda Gate. Kane frowned. How many ships? Unknown, sir. Long-range sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings. Sarah felt a familiar tension. The war was supposed to be over, but there were still Zephyrian forces scattered across the galaxy. Most had surrendered or been destroyed, but a few holdout groups continued to fight. Shall I prepare a response force? Sarah asked. Kane considered this. No, let the local species handle it. The Kalari have a strong fleet in that sector, and they know the area better than we do. We'll provide support if they request it, but this is their space now. Sarah nodded. It was the right decision, even if it felt strange to step back and let others fight. Humanity had spent 3 years at the forefront of every major battle. Learning to trust their allies would take time. As Kane dealt with the tactical situation, Sarah returned to her walk through the ruined capital. The symbolism wasn't lost on her. She was literally walking through the graveyard of an empire that had seemed invincible just 3 years ago. The Zephyrians had made a critical error when they chose to destroy humanity's colonies. They had intended to terrorize humans into submission, but instead they had awakened something that would not stop until their empire was completely destroyed. Sarah thought about the children playing in the rubble behind her. Representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia, now working together to build a better future. It was what humanity had died for in those colonies, the chance for all species to live freely among the stars. Admiral Kane joined her as she reached the center of the ruined plaza. In the distance, construction crews were erecting a memorial to the victims of Zephyrian genocide. All 47 species that had been wiped out by the Empire. Any regrets? Kane asked. Sarah considered the question. The past 3 years had seen unimaginable destruction. Entire star systems had been devastated. Billions had died in the fighting. The galaxy would take decades to recover from the war. But the alternative would have been worse. If humanity had surrendered or been destroyed, the Zephyrian Empire would have continued its expansion. More species would have been enslaved or exterminated. the galaxy would have remained under authoritarian rule for thousands more years. No, Sarah said finally. They burned our colonies. They killed our people. They threatened to wipe out our entire species. We gave them exactly what they deserved. Kane nodded. The question now is whether we can help the galaxy build something better. Sarah looked at the memorial rising in the distance, then at the children playing in the ruins. Human and alien, former enemies and allies all working together toward a common future. We will, she said with certainty. It's what we do. Above them, the first ships of the new Galactic Alliance fleet passed overhead. Vessels crewed by dozens of species, equipped with technology that no single civilization could have developed alone. The age of empire was ending. The age of cooperation was just beginning. Humanity had kept its promise. The aliens had burned their colonies, so Earth had burned their empire from existence. But more than that, humanity had given the galaxy something it hadn't had in 3,000 years. Hope for a better future. The reckoning was complete. Now the real work could begin.